Hi, everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Janice Pearson. I hope you like the overalls. Today was chicken coop cleaning day, so you get me in my overalls today. That's okay. I'm going to be sharing my screen here shortly, and you won't have to look at me. So anyway, on this video, I want to explore a little bit more of the words have power phase of my 12-week simple plan that I introduced in my last video. And I also found information about that Japanese scientist that did the experiment on water, where he exposed different samples of water to different words, and then he froze them, and then immediately froze them afterwards, and then looked at them under the microscope to see the different crystals that were formed. And you'll be surprised if you're not familiar with this particular experiment, you'll be surprised to see the different crystals that are formed in water by the different words that it's exposed to. So I'm going to share my screen here now. So give me a minute because I am, a little slow on my use of technology. Okay, here we go. So before we get into the experiment on water and the words have power phase of my 12-week plan, I just wanted to do a quick recap of the I, E, and S domains, where I stands for intrinsic, E is extrinsic, and the S is systemic. And the intrinsic domain is where forward movement lies. The intrinsic domain is where you will find uniqueness, singularity, one of a kind, and dynamics. That's where you will find all of those things, and that applies to people. The extrinsic is where you will find, that's where the doing is, and it applies to things. And systemic applies to ideas. It applies to ideas of things and ideas of people. So you will notice that each domain has an application to a specific, or has a specific application. And so if you use a domain that doesn't apply to, or that applies to a different application, that can be detrimental. So for example, and I apologize if I'm not very clear. For example, if you use the extrinsic domain or the systemic domain to think about people, then you reduce them to things and ideas. That's why the intrinsic domain is best used when thinking about people. And I'm going to read to you a little paragraph that will kind of help you to understand this concept a little better. And then I also talked about in my last video how I is greater than E is greater than S. And what this really means is that the intrinsic should be, when thinking about people, so this really is when thinking about people, the intrinsic should be used first and should be used to inform the extrinsic, which should be used then to inform the systemic. So it's not that the intrinsic domain is better than the others, and it's not that you don't need the extrinsic or the systemic. It's just that when thinking about people, you will get better results for yourself and when thinking about others if you focus on the intrinsic first and let the intrinsic inform the other two. And this represents when you're talking about percentages, and forgive me, I forgot to put in the percentages here. You're probably wondering why I have these numbers in here. It's supposed to be 35% intrinsic, and then 33% extrinsic, and 32% systemic. So you'll notice that it's not like 80% intrinsic and 10% the others or anything like that. It's just a little more shift towards the intrinsic over the extrinsic over the systemic. And this can also be represented by thinking of your being and let your being inform your doing, and let your doing inform your becoming. So hopefully that makes sense. And I'm just going to read to you a little paragraph that describes yoga. You might be into yoga, you might be not, but I think all of us are familiar with yoga. So hopefully this will be a good example to help you to wrap your head around this IES balance. And this comes from the Totally Coached manual from Intrinsic Solutions International, which is where I received my training for my certified intrinsic health and well-being coaching. So knowing how to do each yoga pose and the science behind yoga is systemic. Comparing how you do the poses to how someone next to you does the poses is extrinsic. And even more so, if you feel that your better poses make you better than the person you are comparing yourself to, or if you feel the person next to you wouldn't be interested in talking to you since his or her poses are better than yours. So that's all extrinsic. Doing a pose while focused on what feels right and good to you, where you are exploring your own personal best and noticing the total effect of your poses on your body and yourself, is intrinsic. It's all yoga, and it's accomplished with some combination of I, E, and S, depending on how you think about what you're doing and what it means. So you'll notice in that example, whenever you're comparing yourself to another person, you're in the extrinsic domain. And when you're thinking about how you should be doing a pose, you're in that is an idea, so you're in the systemic domain. Whenever you are thinking about how it feels to you and how it applies to you and whether or not you like it, that is the intrinsic domain, because it's all about you. It's not about anyone else. And something else, another thing that I wanted to bring up about this intrinsic logic when we're thinking about people is that, and I think I said it before, when we think about people as, or when we apply the extrinsic and systemic thinking to people, we reduce them to things and ideas. And I apologize, I did say that before. So let's move on. One other concept that is very key to the intrinsic domain is the concept that people, including you, are capable, creative, and complete just as you are. You are capable, creative, and complete just as you are, and everyone else is also capable, creative, and complete just as they are. And what this basically means, what it boils down to, is that you as a person, in all of your totality, your singularity and uniqueness, you are not lacking in any way. And the person next to you is also, in their totality and their completeness, they are not lacking in any way. And so that's what this capable, creative, complete means, is that you are a capable, creative, and complete person, and you are not lacking in any way. Now, when we're talking about forward movement, this does not mean that you stay as you are. So even though you are capable, creative, and complete as you are, to have forward movement means that you're not going to stay as you are. You want to continue to move forward so that you can unleash your potential. Something else that I started to mention in the last slide, but probably fits better in this slide, is this is a mindset that is very helpful to adopt for yourself, as well as when thinking about other people. One thing that is important to remember is that when we look at another person, we see just the outside. We see what's merely apparent. We don't see their morning where they were late to work, or they yelled at their spouse or their kids, or we don't see their history that they had with their family. We don't see any of those things. And so we just see the person from the outside. And then when we just rely on that mental thought, that's all we see, we make a quick judgment. It happens automatically. We see a person, we see them on the outside, and we automatically make a judgment on what we observe on the outside. And that's not a complete judgment because we don't know the complete person. We can't possibly see all the things that are not merely apparent in that person. And so if we practice thinking about people as capable, creative, and complete, and we also apply that to ourselves, then we allow ourselves and other people that space to be dynamic and to move forward and to evolve. And we maximize people rather than reduce them with extrinsic and systemic thinking, which reduces people to things and ideas. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So now I just want to quickly review the simple 12-week plan. Hang on just a second. Yes, I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure that I had my slides in the right order. Okay, so this is the simple 12-week plan that I introduced in the last video. And you'll notice that it is divided up into 4 phases. And each phase is divided up into 3 weeks. And there's a reason for that. And I'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. Actually, I will talk about it after we talk about the Japanese scientist. So here, quickly, let me just flip back here. I just want to emphasize how phase 1 is, the title of it is Words Have Power. And we're going to explore that now by talking about our scientist, Masaru Emoto. And I'm sure I mispronounced that, so I apologize to all my Japanese friends. I do not speak Japanese, so I apologize. So I did a little bit of research on this scientist, and unfortunately there's not a lot available online, but I just wanted to quickly grab a quick snapshot, and Wikipedia tends to be a place where you can find information about just about everything. And so yes, sometimes it's biased, so you have to be careful, not to take everything at face value. However, it does tend to include the basic information, and so you can kind of get a basic information from Wikipedia. So that's why I included that source here. And you can go up and you can look him up on your own and click on these different links that are included in this little bio that I included. So he was a Japanese businessman, an author, and pseudoscientist. Now that's Wikipedia's choice of words, so take it for whatever value it has to you. Who claimed that human consciousness could affect the molecular structure of water. He wrote a book about his experiments, and he started these experiments back in 1999, and he continued his experiments through, I believe, 2004 when he wrote his book. And I described earlier how what he did was he would take samples of water, expose them to various words, and then he would immediately freeze them and then look at the crystals under the microscope. And you can see the marked difference between the crystals that were formed from positive words, such as love and gratitude, and negative words, such as you disgust me. Or look at the very bottom example on where it shows what water looks like when exposed to evil or gratitude. And you can see what an incredible difference there is. And I talked about in my last video also about the plant experiment that most third graders do for their science projects, where they expose a plant, 2 different plants, to one to positive words and the other to negative words, and the difference that you see there on a bigger level. You can see that the plant that is exposed to positive words typically thrives and grows, and then the plant that's exposed to negative words typically withers and dies. Well, with water, it's a much more subtle difference effect. And I say subtle just because Again, it goes back to that merely apparent. When you speak to a glass of water, you don't immediately see the effect, but clearly on a microscopic level, there is an effect on that water. So this is just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about words that you tell yourself, words that you tell other people, words that you think to yourself, words that you think about other people, that they actually do have a physical effect, even though it may not be merely apparent. So now I just want to go over phase 1 of the my 12-week plan, which is words have power. And these 3 weeks that I've created in this phase are very simple. It's not a lot of work that you have to do. And you can look at this whole plan as a framework. And if you think about a frame is just kind of a boundary that allows you to work within a boundary. And so what does a frame do? It usually frames a picture. Well, you get to choose the colors that you use. You get to choose the type of paint that you use in the picture that you're creating for yourself. So just look at this as a framework, as kind of a guide for how you want to go about doing this phase, if this is something that you feel is a fit for you. So in week 1, all you have to do is choose a mantra or a goal and write it down. Mantra and goal I'm using interchangeably, because I like to use the word mantra just because to me it represents what you value, and it's also something that is typically spoken. So that's why I use that word, but you can use goal, you can use affirmation, whatever you'd like. So in this week 1, in choosing your mantra or goal, it sounds very easy, but you will find that when you go to think about these goals that you're wanting for yourself, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I also want to remind you of the difference between a goal versus a strategy. Oftentimes when we choose goals, we're actually choosing strategies that are masquerading as goals. And I used an example in my last video of the goal to lose weight. Now that may be a goal or a desire that you have, or it may not be, but it's a good example because I think all of us know someone, if that's not something that interests us, we know someone that has had that interest. So the example of I want to lose weight is actually a strategy, because that is the doing. The goal underneath that strategy could be, I want to lose weight because I want to be healthy. I value health. I don't feel that I'm healthy at the weight that I'm at, and I value a healthy weight. I value my health, and therefore I want to lose weight. So that the actual goal would be that I am wanting to be healthy. I value my health. And then so that's really what you're wanting to focus on, is just that big picture goal. What is it that you are wanting for yourself? And then later on down the line, we can work on those strategies of how you're going to accomplish that goal. Now, it's very important that you write it down, because the way our human brains work, if we don't write something down, then we tend to forget it, unless you have total recall, which I don't. I think my husband does, but I definitely don't have total recall. Yes, he remembers everything that I say to him, so he definitely has total recall. Anyway, so you want to write it down, and you can write it down on a notepad. You can write it down on a Post-it sticker. You can even use your phone to write it down. I'm someone that really advocates for using your phone as a tool. I write lots of things down in the notes section of my phone, and that's a great place for you to write down your goal. Because most of us carry our phones around with us, and we don't always have a notebook and paper with us. And so that's a great way to record your mantra or your goal. And one other thing that I wanted to say about choosing your mantra or goal is you don't have to spend a ton of time thinking about it. I'm not talking about sitting down and meditating for hours. I'm just talking about 5 minutes. choose a nice quiet place, a place that where you're comfortable. It could be in your car. It could be right when you get up while you're sitting in bed. It could be at lunch. Whenever you have a few moments of free time, just spend 5 minutes really thinking about what you're wanting, not what someone else wants for you, not what you think you should want, but what you really want for yourself. So then week 2, all you have to do is read your mantra or goal every day. So you're starting to develop that habit of thinking about that mantra, that goal all the time. And then week 3, you're going to transition into the power of words, the power of saying your goal out loud. So you're going to say your mantra or your goal out loud to yourself every day. And that's all you do for that phase 1. Now, again, I wanted to point out the magic of 3 that I talked about in my first video. 3 is a number that represents perfection. It also represents phases of time, such as beginning, middle, end. It also represents simplicity. And that's why I chose this 3. That's one of the reasons why I chose to divide these phases into 3 weeks. But also, you will notice that 3 weeks represent 21 days. And it has been discovered that 21 days, it takes roughly 21 days to create a habit. So that's why I felt it was important to divide these into 3 weeks for each phase, so that hopefully by the end of the 3 weeks, those 21 days, you will have created a habit of thinking about your goal every single day. So that's really all I wanted to go over in this video, just to focus on one of those phases. And I hope that you found this informative and also motivating. And I hope that it is something that will help you in your journey of moving forward in 2023. So if you like this video, please make sure you click the like button and also subscribe to my videos. If you know of someone that you feel would benefit from these videos, please feel free to share it. And also leave your thoughts and comments below in the comment section. And I hope you have a fabulous week. I plan to do another video next week to review phase 2 of the 12-week plan. And so I will talk to you next week on that next video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you later.